friends, it's Jasmine. I hope that you all are doing well. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I make witchy content here on YouTube, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell, that way you can stay up to date on all of my postings. And let's get into today's video, talking about Jake Richards' book, Backwoods Witchcraft. So here's what the outside of the book looks like. I'm trying to keep the glare, but here's what the outside of the book looks like. Backwoods Witchcraft, Jake Richards, I believe that's a lunar moth. Conjure and folk magic from Appalachia. And the back of the book says, in Backwoods Witchcraft, Jake Richards offers up a folksy stew of family stories, lore, omens, and rituals, conjure crafts that he learned from his grandmother and his great-grandmother and his grandfather, a Baptist minister who Jake remembers could rid someone of a fever with an egg or stop the blood in a wound. The witchcraft practiced in Appalachia is very much of a folk magic of a place, a tradition that honors the seen and the unseen beings that inhabit the land, as well as the soil, roots, and plant life. The materials and tools used in Appalachian witchcraft are readily available from the land. This grounded approach will be a keen interest to witches and conjure folk regardless of where they live. Readers will be guided in how to build relationships with the spirits and other beings that dwell around them, and how to use the materials and tools that are readily available on the land one lives. This book in particular, at first glance, I'll be honest, maybe wouldn't be a book that I would have initially picked up myself, to be honest. However, I am part of this book club, and this was the book nominated for our monthly pick for book club, which the book club, I will put it down in the description bar down below, but we run an in-person and online book club. So the in-person book club is at the shop, Spiritual Gardens, and the online book club is done online. So we have a meetup every other month. So 1 month it'll be online, 1 month it'll be in person, and we kind of have suggestions given to us by our local community at the shop, and then we pull from those suggestions, and then we pick 3 books, and then the community as a whole votes on what book is going to be our current book club pick. And this Backwoods Witchcraft is what our Indianapolis community voted upon. And as someone who's very interested in kind of human studies, I thought it wasn't, I guess I should say, it wasn't super shocking to me that this book was chosen, considering in Indianapolis, Indiana, where we are kind of neighbors to Appalachia. We're not technically part of Appalachia because the mountains don't really run through here. However, in the southern part of my state, we have these hills that are kind of the roll-off of the Appalachian Mountains, and they're often called the Little Smokies. And so I think we have a lot of runoff of people because to my delight and to my surprise, we had a lot of people really resonate with this book because of their ancestry, and they really connected because, they're initially from West Virginia, or they're initially from Kentucky, or they're initially from Tennessee. And Indiana is often called the crossroads of America. And where we live right next to Appalachia. So it's not surprising to me that a lot of people would have this sort of connection to a book like this, when technically Appalachia kind of is our neighbors. And I feel like the magic of those mountains still kind of permeates through these lands, even though the mountains themselves don't cut through our state. I said at first, this is probably not a book that I initially would have picked off the shelf. However, that's really the cool thing about book club, is that you get exposed to books that you maybe wouldn't otherwise have read. And at first glance, to me, this book is very aesthetic, but Backwoods Witchcraft, I don't know. I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. I didn't really know a whole lot about Appalachian Conjure, nor did I know a lot about Appalachian culture either. And that's why I like this book, because it really did educate me. And I think that as witches, it is our duty and responsibility to make sure we're keeping the first pillar, which is to know your craft and to be committed to always learning and growing. And especially someone who works so closely with my local community at the shop and as a reader, as a high priestess, I think that this book will also better help me connect more to the community, as this is the book that was voted upon by the community. This book is only about 200 pages, give or take, so it's not a super heavy book. If you're a proficient reader, you can probably breeze through this pretty quickly. And if you're not a proficient reader, it is available on Audible as well. I personally purchased the physical copy of the book, but I also purchased the Audible copy as well, because sometimes life just gets so busy, and having an Audible version is really nice, because that way when you're driving to work or running to a friend's house or running an errand, you can turn on a chapter and listen to it. And no, Audible is not sponsoring this video, nor is Jake Richards sponsoring this. I just wanted to really give this an honest review and share my personal kind of opinions and hot takes on the book. You already know, as always, I took notes. So this is my notebook. I'm dedicating this notebook to book club, specifically. Witches, we love notebooks, okay?
Love a notebook. We love a notebook. Honey, a witch loves a notebook. We love a notebook.
My book club notebook, and here's a little nail cam. I still have these purple nails. I know, I gotta go get these done, you guys. But let me get into some of my notes. So here's the first page of my notes. Yes, we be taking notes.
We be taking the notes.
So one of the things that I noted is that Jake Richards wrote about the sight, or dreaming true. And that kind of resonated with me. Now, to my knowledge, I don't have any ancestry from the hills or from Appalachia, but I won't lie, the Smoky Mountains have really always kind of called me, and every time I go, the magic is undeniable. My family, we've always called this the eye. So that can mean psychically, kind of like dreaming true, or the sight, like Jake Richards mentions. It could be psychically, so like, oh, they have the eye, or she has the eye. But it could also be more like for the arts as well, arts aside from witchcraft, because I do perceive witchcraft to be a type of art. So maybe for like interior design, maybe your cousin is really good at that. My family would say, oh yeah, he has the eye for that. Another quote from the book is that grandma would curse you with the same name that she blessed you with. And I just really liked that. I thought that was a really cute quote in the book. And it reminded me a lot of someone who I'm very close with, who I view as an auntie. So I liked that quote. Also, the book mentions about a black baptism. The black baptism in the book about becoming witch, using dirt from a graveyard and a silver platter, reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards. So one of the things in the book is that Jake talks about how really the faith healers and the practitioners, I believe, went by the name of Yarb doctors. I apologize if I'm not saying that right. And witches were thought to be magical practitioners who
worship the devil,
essentially. And one of the other reasons I like this book so much is I just finished Keldon's book on traditional witchcraft, which I actually had Keldon on the channel and we did a live stream together, so you should definitely check that out as well. But I actually think that this book paired really nicely with traditional witchcraft in the sense of working with the devil. And this black baptism sounds totally like something up my alley. And maybe that's not what I was supposed to have gotten from the book, because it kind of paints witches in particular in a poor light, and that Yarb doctors are kind of, you know, the standard. But the idea of taking graveyard dirt, not from a particular grave, but just from the graveyard, and then taking a silver platter, which I just recently got one from a thrift store, and putting that graveyard dirt on the platter and standing against the current, which I think is very metaphorical, and allowing the water to mix with the dirt and then rubbing it all over your body and then blaspheming under the full moon and saying the Lord's Prayer backwards and dedicating yourself to the devil sounds like something I would be interested in. Also, the Appalachian Mountains are a 400 million year old mountain range. That's kind of scary in of itself. Stretching from Canada to Alabama. It's the second largest mountain range in the world, I believe, is what Jake Richards said in the book. I also thought it was interesting, Jake talks about the dog days of summer, and I've always heard people say that, but I actually didn't really know where that reference came from. And Jake says the dog days of summer are from July 3rd until August 11th. The star, Sirius, moves with the sun, making it a highly superstitious and dangerous time. One thing I've learned from Appalachian TikTok is
No, you didn't.
in the sense that there are a lot of spirits of the land and possibly like fae folk and indigenous spirits that reside within these hills. And there's a lot of superstition in this area, rightfully so. So I kind of took note of that because it's funny because, so the Solar Court Coven, we all mostly live here in Indianapolis, but every year we go on our Solar Court Witches Retreat. And typically we go to Brown County, Indiana, which is part of that Little Smokies I was talking about. It's in southern Indiana. And typically we stay in a cabin in southern Indiana. And, you know, we're all mostly city girls for the most part. And there have been times on retreat where we have witnessed a
No, you didn't.
sort of moment, and maybe those experiences are heightened because we're there in the dog days of summer where the star Sirius moves with the sun and superstition and danger is more afoot. Tying this back into Keldon's book on traditional witchcraft, Jake also talks about the witch's devil in the sense that there is a lot of devilish folklore. One in particular would be, I believe it's called the Devil's Looking Glass. And I think that's where a woman from folklore, I'm not sure if she ever existed in the flesh or if she's more of a folkloric sort of witch, but Ms. Wilson apparently resides at the Devil's Looking Glass and has a seance and invokes the dead. And I think this is meant to be more of sort of a scary tale, but I couldn't help but feel like I would like to invoke Miss Wilson and talk to her myself. I think it's interesting too because in Keldon's book, Keldon talks about a lot of devilish places, and the same can be said for Jake's book. Even here in Indiana at Shades Park, we have a place called the Devil's Punch Bowl, and I think that that's kind of interesting because it seems to me like there's multiple Devil's Punch Bowls. And so that has me intrigued. And I think that the folklore around that kind of excites me. Jake also talked about how they don't call it hot foot powder, they call it uprooting powder, and I thought that that was interesting as well. Jake talks about the influence of Appalachian Conjure being from Irish settlers and runaway slaves and Native Americans, and this sort of melting pot and mixing pot of these traditions that have created Appalachian Conjure, which is a very American form of, in my opinion, witchcraft. And, you know, I think that is interesting as well. Overall, I'm really glad that I read this book. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I would honestly probably give it an 8 or a 9. It's a quick read, it's an easy read. Jake has a wonderful writing style. This isn't typically a book that I would have picked up, but like I said, it's what the book club picked. And that's the cool thing about book club is that you get exposed to books that maybe you wouldn't have read on your own. I really enjoyed it. Like, I definitely think that if you're interested in some American style witchcraft, or if you're interested in Appalachia, or if you're interested in sort of, this style, should I say, of magic, then you should definitely check this book out. I mean, I don't regret purchasing this. And I think that it's really going to help me better understand Appalachian Conjure, Appalachian culture, and our local community that voted upon this book, because I do believe, even though Appalachia doesn't run through our state, that we have some cultural and magical runoff from those hills. I mean, the mountains are so old and so big, and we're right next door to them. So definitely check this book out if you are interested. Thank you so much again for watching. I've had a few people ask me about how to support the channel. By liking this video and subscribing to the channel, that is supporting the channel. If you would like to support me more, my Patreon link is down below and you can check that out as well. And yeah, I think that's kind of the end of my review. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I really had fun at book club, and we had some new faces this time. This was actually our biggest turnout. Jake, if you're watching, thank you for putting this book together and sharing some of your stories and your recipes in this book. I was joking with one of my coven mates recently because she's from a little bit further south, and I've never had beans and cornbread, but like, I think you mentioned it more than once in the book, and I have to try it. So if you're watching, if you have a good recipe, or if there was one in the book that I missed, please let me know. And yeah, I think that that's kind of bringing it to a close here, you guys. So I enjoy doing these book reviews a lot, and I enjoy reading these books a lot. And thank you all so much for your love and your support. And until next time, blessed be, and I'll see you in hell.